and God created America. To thank God, America printed his name on its most precious cult object, the banknote. It allows Americans to serve two masters at the same time, God and money.
And God blessed America. America became the most powerful, the most industrial, the most Christian, the most democratic, the most this and the most that country in the world. And accordingly, everything was for the best in the best of worlds until was added a supplement to Genesis.
God created man and placed him in a beautiful garden, gave him a wife, and told them to be fruitful and multiply. They multiplied so well that humanity grew in exponential numbers, but turned rapidly so wicked that God decided to eradicate it by creating a great flood that would wipe out every creature off the surface of the earth. Unfortunately, there was a guy so blameless that God could not make the decision to drown him and his family in the waters of his flood. He allowed him to build some kind of a barge, taking with him a couple of all animals, and float over the flood. And that is what that guy did. He floated.
Unfortunately, the reconstituted humanity turned again so wicked that God tired of it and decided to eradicate it definitively. But no more great flood, as he had acknowledged his first flood was a flop. God decided to do nothing. He knew that man was going to invent the automobile, practice unrestrained greed, over-multiply, politicize, and wage war.
Man made of the automobile a necessity and a passion. Everyone on Earth wants to possess a car. There are over 600 million motor vehicles in the world today. If present trends continue, the number of cars will double to reach 1.2 billion in 2030. God was right, but go and tell the Chinese or the Indians that they should not try to imitate us and stay with ass and oxen in order to preserve the planet and allow us to drive our cars with no guilt trips. And try to tell American manufacturers that they should not build and sell automobiles in those countries.
1.2 billion automobiles? But who cares about the pollution and the destruction of the planet, as long as cars can run? There are those who know the truth about the pollution and the destruction of the planet, the scientific community. There are those who do not know or do not want to know the truth, the government and business communities. Their opportune ignorance allows them to promote forcibly the greatest misleading of the century under the name ethanol.
The biggest lie on earth. What is not said is that the production of ethanol consumes in traditional means, oil, natural gas, coal, or others, 3/4 of ethanol finally produced. Moreover, producing ethanol also demands large amounts of corn, sugarcane, and other types of biomass. All of a sudden, all arable surfaces on Earth are transformed into producers for gas tanks. Amazonian forests in Brazil are cut down at full speed to make room for sugarcane plantations intended for the production of ethanol. If all the cars were running on ethanol, the equivalent of global pollution produced by those cars and the production of ethanol would practically be the same as if they were running on oil, like in the good old days.
Homicide by omission. Everywhere, forests disappear and harvests of greens go directly into gas tanks. Prices of milk, corn, rice, and other products go up, pushing to more than 1 billion the number of those who starve, because they cannot afford to buy them anymore.
Greed. Brain damaged by greed, the big corporations, with the complicity of governments, provided the East with the science and know-how that had made the supremacy of the West for several centuries. The history of humanity is the history of the disappearance of empires and civilizations. History does not repeat itself. Men repeat history. Today, 2 blocks, west and east, Atlantic and Pacific, possess the same technology. The difference is that, on one side, you count them by millions, and, on the other side, by billions.
At the end of World War II, America was the most productive country. After having been prostituted to Asia, the result is plus 1 trillion minus 7 trillion. And China is now buying America and Africa.
Politics. The art of politics will become easier and easier with the American of the future after the failure of education, long exposure to brainwashing TV, and the perverting Big Brother. Democracy presents the celebrated unique American species, the bicephalous two-headed party.
The two-party system is surely the greatest foe of democracy in the contemporary republic. Two parties cannot fairly represent the spectrum of ideas and ideals espoused by the citizenry. The two-party system gives the impression that there exists representative government because voters select legislators and a chief executive. However, this is pure chimera, as the party machinery actually controls who is put to election. As Boss Tweed of New York said in the 19th century, "Let the people select their leaders so long as I select the candidates."
It could probably be shown, by facts and figures, that there is no distinctly Native American criminal class except Congress. War is nothing but the continuation of politics by other means. The consequence could be the use of the military as a weapon in the hands of business to defend or require resources and markets. But Americans always remember the words by the General President Eisenhower.
Every gun that is made, every warship that is launched, every rocket fired signifies, in the final sense, a theft from those who hunger and are not fed, those who are cold and are not clothed. This world in arms is not spending money alone. It is spending the sweat of its laborers, the genius of its scientists, and the hopes of its children.
This is the reason why Americans do not bestow more than half the nation's budget on the military and launched a worldwide campaign on the theme, "War will cease when men will refuse to fight." Overpopulation. In 1 century, the 20th, the population grew from 1.6 billion to 6.6 billion. 8 to 9 billion are predicted before the middle of the 21st century, on a planet which is supposed to have already reached its limits with 6.6 billion.
Be fruitful and multiply, God said to Adam and Eve. In order to accomplish that function, God gave them the pleasure of sex. When he cursed Eve and told her she would have pain to give birth, he did not tell Adam and her that they would have pain to have sex. Many religious and not so religious authorities maintain that sex is for nothing else than procreation, and that the best way to avoid conception is abstinence. It is eventually asking an individual to be a saint, and it is not easy being a saint. On the Catholic list of recognized saints, their number is infinitesimal.
If the art of war has always been taught with the most accuracy for centuries, the art of love was never given such a care. A well-educated lover is the best lover, one who knows how to have the pleasure of sex without making babies.
Overpopulation happens mainly in countries where love is the coffee of the poor. Overpopulation is the basic cause for the death of the planet because if there is for 3, there is for 4 is not always right.
Bretton Woods Conference in 1944 produced the brilliant idea that the development of the underdeveloped world was not a problem of coffee, but of financial assistance and trade regulations. In the most classical style of capitalist economy, an international bank for reconstruction and development and an international monetary fund were going to resolve the problems of the poor countries. Loan them money, and they will soon be on their feet.
There are more poor people than ever. Companies such as Monsanto transformed agriculture into agribusiness. They took away the last chance of the poor countries to survive by themselves by destroying their local economy, now part of the exigencies of global economy.
But big fish still eat small fish in the legal law of the jungle of free enterprise. Economists do not seem even to have the slightest intuition that free enterprise is based on total nonsense. In free enterprise, the nonsense is to make believe that the gazelle can dance freely under the nose of the lioness in the Garden of Eden of business, where the lioness has nothing else in mind other than a leg of gazelle served as an appetizing lunch for her hungry man and 3 cubs. In more precise terms, freedom is a conquest of society over nature, and cannot be but the product of laws protecting everyone, including the small, not the reverse. The reverse brings the small to extinction.
For I am a pirate king, and it is a glorious thing to be a pirate king. For I am a pirate king, a pirate king, and it is a glorious thing to be a pirate king. It is a pirate king, a pirate king.
But who cares about the people or the planet as long as money comes in?
And what has the future in store for humanity if its leaders keep on criminally not addressing the real problems? When the aliens will come from another planet to visit the Earth and will find all of us dead in the middle of our cars, they will say, "Strange. Look, they died in the middle of abundance." And they will send divers to explore our craniums, and they will find them empty. And they will say,
"Look, they died of emptiness in the middle of abundance."
But
This country, with its institutions, belongs to the people who inhabit it. Whenever they shall grow weary of the existing government, they can exercise their constitutional right of amending it, or their revolutionary right to dismember or overthrow it.
Yes, I am also an alien. One of those aliens busy at destroying planet Earth. While I was driven here by one of my friends, I wrote a few words to serve as a conclusion to the images that you have watched so far. I entitled them The Planet Address. And God brought forth a new planet in the universe and created man with the proposition that all men are created equal and shall equally share the resources of the planet. But leaders went wicked. No century saw more war, holocaust, famine, destruction, violence, and inequality than the 20th century. In the 20th century, the population jumped from 1.6 billion to 6.6 billion. The consumption of oil went from almost unknown usage to almost extinction. And the 21st century is doing no better. The reason for such a disaster is that, so far, only two morally bankrupt economic and political systems have governed the world: capitalism and socialism. Instead of peace, justice, and security in equality, both bred conflict, injustice, and insecurity in inequality. Both nurtured within themselves the cause for their failures. For the capitalist, it was the worship of money. For the socialist, it was perversion of the doctrine by desire for domination. As a remedy to disintegration of society and destruction of the earth, the Planet program is plainly logical if you put two and two together. it constitutes a salvage plan that politicians do not have the courage to advocate. Politicians fear disturbing an electorate that does not wish to be disturbed, with the thought that in face of 9 billion people in 2030 and more thereafter, 300 million Americans will have to sacrifice part of their comfort and their empire. Empires are destined to fall. We must now make the decision that it is a planet for all and all for the planet, so that humanity shall not perish from the earth. While preserving their personality and independence, all nations agreed to comply voluntarily with the articles of the Planet Program and act accordingly. Periodic reunion of nations allow to review what has been done, what has to be done, and how it has to be done. World government withers away. 1. Army. Elimination of all armies. Their budgets contribute to the implementation of the following points. 2. Overpopulation. Love is the coffee of the poor. Improve the condition of existence of the poor and teach them how to make love without making babies. 3. Environment, energy. Ban on all destructions of the environment. Development of all sources of clean energy and progressive elimination of all sources of pollution. 4. Resources. And of unlimited growth of consumption on a limited planet. Establishment of a balance between needs and resources. 5. Industry, business. In industrial and multinational enterprises, workers have the power of participatory democracy. Cooperation replaces competition. Renaissance of local economies, especially in developing countries, to allow them to become independent and self-sustaining. Help to artisans, small business, and small farming. 6. Education. Free education for all at all levels. Exposure to living arts and practice of sports such as sailing, gliding, horse riding, and so on. 7. Healthcare. Universal. 8. Politics. Public political career of 2 terms or no more than 8 years. All conflict and miseries afflicting humanity have been motivated by greed or desire of domination. But being man-made, they also can be man-solved. Beyond religions and failed political parties, Planet is the party of the people who believe in the good side of man and the salvation of humanity. A planet for all and all for the planet, it can be done. There is one thing that no guns in the world can stop. It is an idea whose time has come.